May 1940. A column is moving when it shouldn't be moving. Engines still running, orders still changing, night still swallowing the road. And somewhere inside that machine, inside a truck cab, inside a tank, inside a dispatch rider's pocket, there's something small and white that doesn't look like a weapon. A tablet. Not coffee, not adrenaline. A pharmaceutical stimulant. Pervitin, a methamphetamine-based drug that Germany had already sold to civilians before the war. And in the months leading into the France campaign, it didn't stay a civilian product. It moved into the military system, distributed through medical channels, used to keep crews awake for sustained operations, and supplied in quantities that are hard to ignore. This is not the lazy claim that Blitzkrieg was drugs. Blitzkrieg was radios, planning, concentration of force, risk, and opponents making catastrophic assumptions. But chemistry mattered as a multiplier in one specific place. It bought time from the body, and then demanded payment. And the disturbing question is this: what happens when a state treats exhaustion like a technical problem and tries to solve it with a pill? Pervitin enters the story before the battlefield. Late 1930s, Berlin. Temmler, a German pharmaceutical company, produces and markets the stimulant under the brand name Pervitin, and it quickly spreads through civilian life. People use it for fatigue and performance. Students, workers, housewives. Anyone trying to do more than a normal body can comfortably do, because that's what the drug offers at first. Wakefulness, suppressed appetite, a sense of confidence, even euphoria. But what it really does is simpler and more dangerous. It turns down the brain's alarm system. Fatigue feels quieter than it should. Risk feels cheaper than it should. And once war begins, military planners see the obvious application. Modern operations don't pause because someone needs sleep. Trucks still move. Radios still buzz. Orders still change at 2 a.m. In fast-moving war, exhaustion isn't just discomfort. Exhaustion is delay, and delay can collapse a plan. So Pervitin shifts from civilian stimulant to military tool, not as a magical super soldier myth, but as a practical way to stretch wakefulness during specific missions. This is where a key figure appears. Dr. Otto F. Ranke, associated with military physiology research in Berlin. He and others are looking at a cold question. How far can you push a human being before performance collapses? Because mechanized war depends on crews, not just machines. A tank is useless if the crew can't think. A truck is a weapon if it arrives tonight. A dispatch rider is a lifeline if he doesn't fall asleep on the road. So tests and discussions inside military medical circles focus on sustained wakefulness, how to keep people functional longer than normal limits would allow. And then comes the scale. In the period around the 1940 Western campaign, sources describe tens of millions of stimulant tablets supplied to the Wehrmacht and Luftwaffe, often cited as about 35 million Pervitin and Isofon tablets between April and July 1940. Whatever exact distribution looked like unit by unit, that number tells you something important. This wasn't a few guys abusing pills. This was a system trying to purchase tempo with chemistry. Now look at what that purchase buys you, mechanically. If you keep crews awake long enough, you don't just get tired people. You get a predictable collapse. Reaction time slows. Attention narrows. Micro-sleep hits without warning. Mistakes multiply. A stimulant can delay that drop, temporarily, by masking the signals of exhaustion. And that matters in the first phase of high-tempo operations. Drivers keep driving through the night. Crews keep moving when an opponent expects a pause. Orders keep turning into motion. So the opponent starts making reasonable assumptions. They can't be there yet. They must be resting. They can't keep this up. And then, suddenly, they are there. That shock isn't only tactical. It's psychological. Because it feels like you're fighting an enemy that doesn't sleep. But we have to be honest. Pervitin doesn't replace strategy. It doesn't replace radios. It doesn't replace planning. It tightens the timeline. It amplifies tempo. And tempo is expensive. Here's the part war machines hate admitting. A stimulant doesn't create real energy. It borrows it. And borrowed energy comes with interest. Prolonged wakefulness plus stimulants can shift into a second phase: irritability, tunnel vision, reckless judgment, and eventually crashes. Sometimes severe mental and physical breakdowns. Historical medical discussions and later research describe problems consistent with misuse and extreme sleep deprivation, especially when a system keeps demanding more output while recovery becomes impossible. And as the war goes on, the short campaign logic dies. A sprint can hide the crash until after the finish line. A long war turns the crash into a battlefield event. By 1941, the conflict's shape changes dramatically. Distances expand, conditions harden, recovery gets stripped down. And when the body finally demands sleep, it doesn't negotiate. It takes it, sometimes at the worst possible moment. At that point, the stimulant stops being a clever advantage and starts becoming a liability. Late wars where the story gets darker, not because the drug wins anything, but because the logic reaches its endpoint. If humans are treated like components, then exhaustion becomes a defect, and the solution becomes chemical escalation. Historical reporting and post-war accounts describe late-war experimentation with stimulant mixtures, including a compound referred to as D9, tested on prisoners with the aim of forcing endurance beyond normal limits. This is the logical endpoint of overclocking people. When the component weakens, you don't change the mission. You try to change the chemistry, and the leadership itself shows the same pattern under pressure. Accounts of Hitler's medical regimen under Dr. Theodor Morell describe escalating use of injections and medications over time, including powerful substances used to keep function going as everything collapses. So by late war, this is no longer a story about speed. It's a story about delay. Delay reality. Delay collapse. Delay the bill. But reality always arrives anyway. So what is the real lesson of Pervitin? Not that German soldiers were supermen. Not that Blitzkrieg was just drugs. The lesson is about systems. A modern army is a machine made of humans. And humans have limits that don't care about ideology. Chemistry can buy tempo. It can buy a night drive. It can buy a few days where exhaustion is muted and fear feels farther away. But it cannot replace rest, logistics, food, spare parts, time. When war becomes long, borrowed energy stops being an advantage, because long war doesn't reward debt, it punishes it. Blitzkrieg didn't succeed because a pill won France. It succeeded because doctrine, planning, concentration, and timing worked, and because the enemy believed certain things were impossible. Pervitin mattered because it helped make the impossible feel, briefly, possible. And that's the warning. When a state treats people like disposable components, when it tries to solve human limits with chemical shortcuts, it may gain speed today. But tomorrow, it loses something far more valuable than speed: control.